The Hagmann Report for today. Today is Thursday, March 14th, 2013. This is a live broadcast. My name is Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my co-host, my son, investigator extraordinaire, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Our home base, of course, is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com, not affiliated with any government agency. And, of course, our colleagues to the north, CanadaFreePress.com. And together, both Joe and I would like to welcome you to this Thursday broadcast of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Joe, welcome.
Glad to be here. We are in the same studio tonight, thankfully, and you are connected via phone line while your computer's rebooting, so the sound difference...
you're going to hear a little bit of a click and a sound change, but it's all for the good. It's all good. It's all good. We've got a lot of news. Folks, a lot of news, information, analysis of the news headlines. It just seems like if you've ever done cooking of spaghetti and you put the spaghetti that's already cooked into a sieve, and all that water that goes through that sieve, well, the spaghetti is what we're after, the water is what we're trying to leave behind, the water being the white noise of news, and of course the spaghetti or the pasta being the actual news headlines that are important to us. From a biblical Christian worldview, I suppose that we would be categorized, and we want to welcome our new listeners in, as we speak, listeners in, and I'm not going to mention the camps, the two camps, in Afghanistan, one in Iraq. Want to welcome you to our broadcast. Also, the listeners in Israel want to welcome you as well, and the listeners all across the United States, Canada, and the world. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we have, as you said, a lot of news and stories to get into, a lot of continuation of the Pope from yesterday, as this debate and discussion are continuing throughout the mainstream and alternative media, as to try to figure out mostly what I see of the St. Malachi prophecies being figured out in one day with the election of the Pope, if they're true or not.
Well, and yeah. Okay, let me interrupt just 1 second, because I just want to say this is so important. Folks, we are not engaging in Catholic bashing. This has nothing to do with Catholic bashing. The Roman Catholic, the followers of Roman Catholicism. Look, I went to a seminary. I respect the Roman Catholics out there. This has nothing to do with doctrinal issues. It has nothing to do with issues of faith. This is the politics of religion, and that's it only. So folks, we will not tolerate any type of religious bashing or bashing of Catholics. We are discussing intellectually the politics of the religion at the highest levels only. For example, the Vatican Bank. I had to throw that in there, Joby, because I can guarantee you there will be some people that will be, talking about
this. We can look at it like this. This is a few good analogies I saw today. One is, as far as the prophecy is concerned, trying to discern if it is accurate. Just remember Jesus and remember the people who rejected him and the prophecies of Jesus when nobody believed he was the Messiah, and not till after his death and resurrection did many people think that it was not the prophecies, ancient prophecies being fulfilled from the old prophets. So we have to look at it like that. Prophecy cannot be discerned or fulfilled. Not all prophecy can be recognized, if it is even prophecy, the St. Malachi prophecies, if they are real. It couldn't be discerned in a day with a name. But definitely we need to look at the body of works from this man's past, his present, and what he's going to do in the future. Now, I learned some interesting things about his name, and about a couple different ways you can look at the Peter the Roman. But either way, we don't need to concern ourselves too much with the prophecies of St. Malachi. We don't need to concern ourselves with, Nostradamus's things, the quatrains, which are not in the Bible. What we need to do is be grounded and rooted in doctrine, in sound doctrine.
You're right, and I think the only, for example, the Saint Malachi prophecies, and the content in the book Petrus Hermanus, the extensive investigative research that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam have done. Why are we talking about this? Why would we care, really? Well, we only care because these are pieces of a larger puzzle, and it's the larger puzzle that we're after, not anything else. It's the
right.
It's kind of, once again, I would compare it to a crime scene, and
one thing that bothers me was, Tom Horn and Chris Putnam. And this is nothing against them personally, but I just imagine this response is due in part to a lot of, I would say, heat that they might be getting, or questions or things people might be saying. Hey, this isn't Peter the Roman, as your book says. So they issue statements trying to say, look, or defending their position before it even really needs an answer. Right.
Well, right. Yeah. And I think personally, I really believe if and those people that I've received emails from about Pope Francis, that is the new Pope, saying, well, what an epic failure that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam had. They were way off base on this. I found that each and every one of these people, at least the ones that answered me, never read the book Petrus Hermanus, never listened to our program with Chris Putnam and Tom Horn, or Steve Quayle and Tom Horn, so they don't quite get where it's coming from. They're thinking, well, because the name isn't Peter, the prophecy is a failure.
Yeah, and either way, like I said, it doesn't matter because, one, if you want to find something hard enough, you can find it. And I've seen this today through researching people's interpretations on how they will, they're breaking down his last name. And one part of his last name means a mountain. And they're saying the stone of Peter, and breaking down, trying to fit everything into the way they believe it or interpret it. And that's not what we're supposed to do. The scripture is universal. Scriptures are universal. They are not for private interpretation. They and look at Jeremiah. We'll go back and use Jeremiah as an example. And this can have everything or nothing to do with Saint Malachi. He screamed, our land is going to be destroyed and overtaken by the enemy unless you turn from your ways and repent. And he was called a lunatic. He was thrown in jail.
Right. And
he was right in what he said. It did not come to pass immediately, but his warnings were correct. He was a watchman screaming, to the people, hey, look, you guys, you're so intertwined with your own culture that you've created, your own doings, and have, tarried away from what God's will is. And now, I've been sent to let you know that this is going to be your peril if you don't listen. And he was pretty much laughed at until they were brought down.
Well, one of the things, and you're right, and just for people to understand where we are coming from, where the Hagmann report is coming from on this. For example, we're looking at a world in chaos. Whether you know it or not, I mean, the world is, and one can argue, well, it's always been in chaos. Well, not to the extent that we're seeing now on multiple levels. So when we approach, for example, and I'll use this in the past, when Joe and I would approach an investigation, we would do so, and not really realizing that we were doing so from a biblical standpoint. And it's difficult to really describe in words, but in an investigation, those really wanting the truth will go after the truth. We'll seek the truth. After all, isn't that the ultimate goal of any investigation, is to seek the truth, right? Whether it's a murder case or whether it's a theft case, all we want to know is what is the truth. Well, guiding an investigation, either knowingly or unwittingly, by biblical principles, It gives you the outline of how to discern the truth or evaluate the evidence. And that's kind of, and I was thinking about this today. If we could, in every aspect of our lives, evaluate our actions through the ultimate instructional handbook known as the Bible, wouldn't we be better off? And I think that's what we would be. In other words, approach this with the only bias that we would have is the bias for the unvarnished truth. I guess a bias would be lack of bias, and through a Christian worldview, a Christian biblical worldview, and that's how we're doing things right now. So that said, I hope people understand that this is all we're trying to do is find out exactly where we're coming from in terms of, or find out, or people understand where we're actually seeking the truth and nothing more, nothing less. But one of the things I just want to say this: two things in our research that we found I think are extremely important for everyone to really keep in the back of their mind. It might not be important today, but maybe a month from now it might be. Two things that we stumbled across or came across in terms of looking at this Pope today. The first thing is how we got to this point in the leadership of the Vatican, by way of the Vatican Bank, which is an entity that is managed by Ernst von Freiberg. And the Vatican Bank is a huge, huge resource. It's no ordinary bank. And there's a lot of things. It's kind of like Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, and such. It's an interesting entity, and there are a lot of oddities associated with the Vatican Bank. That's number one. The second thing is, and this is kind of, it could almost be a footnote, the strange death of Pope John Paul I, Albino Luciani, who died under strange circumstances 33 days into his reign back in 1978. So those are two kind of side issues that set a historical foundation, I believe, for where we are right now in terms of the current Pope and the Vatican. And the Vatican is on our radar only because it fits in as one piece of the larger global picture. Hopefully that made sense. And if you want to add anything to that, Joe, I mean, does that make sense to you? I mean,
no, it did make sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're looking at the bigger picture here, and we're looking at the plans for the New World Order. As we know, there is a one world global government system being formed, if not formed already, being executed, and this encompasses all political, economical, and religious aspects. It is not exclusive to one being a political one world order or just a one religious world order. It encompasses all, and that is their goal, stated goal.
Right.
And some of that we have, news today. Just this piece, Monsanto Protection Act. I'm not sure how much this has been being covered with all the other things going on. But there is a vote coming up to Congress this week that would give biotech companies like Monsanto's another win in Washington. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to weigh in on the agriculture appropriations bill for the 2013 fiscal year this week, and included within the act lies the Farmer Assurance Provision, a small subsection that has so far earned opposition from hundreds of thousands of family farmers, environmental interest groups, and other advocates.
Right.
Those hoping to defeat the bill have gone so far as to dub the provision Monsanto Protection Act. The small-time agriculturalists have increasingly spoken out against biotech companies in recent years, as giants like Monsanto have made millions off of genetically engineering crops that traditional plants simply can't match up with. Additionally, Monsanto has taken a slew of farmers to court over questionable patent infringement suits. almost always winning with the help of high-powered attorneys. Now, these suits come from cross-pollination, where you could have a regular farmer on one side of the street and a Monsanto farm on the other side, and some pollen and or seeds get, drifted into the regular farmers' crops, and Monsanto claims rights to the farmers' crops, because now there is Monsanto genetically engineered crops growing within the other small farmers' crops. Just practice. I mean, Monsanto should never have been allowed in the first place to geoengineer crops, especially that now have come out to show such harmful links to cancer, to our body through cancer and other diseases that are used to create whatever products are used to create these GMO super crops are killing our bodies.
During the show prep, when you brought this up, I was like, well, this is kind of a big yawn factor here for me. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, this is kind of old news, and really, where does this fit in? And then I realized, and you pointed this out to me, I realized that this, and this is part of the reference material that we have, but federal courts are actually powerless to regulate the sale and even the cultivation of these GMO crops. They have to, they are subjugated, or the federal courts actually succumb instead of the power of the industry itself, as well as Monsanto specifically. And this is the same threat that we faced last summer when this act first came into play. But there was also, and we have to look at this, we have to follow the money here, because what this is doing. By the way, this was a kind of a bombshell thing that was slipped into the 2012 Farm Bill, the 2013 Agriculture Appropriations Bill. This is Monsanto taking over the small farms, and the end result here is going to be starvation.
Yeah, it's not only taking over the farms. From what I understand, it is taking over the government, giving itself power above and beyond the government. Yes, it's power to regulate them.
And that's and if you look at the one way, the growth of this one world order, where the tentacles, it's like an octopus. You've got one tentacle into the agriculture, the food, and another tentacle into the defense, another tentacle into the judiciary. Well, this affects not only the food, but the judiciary, because it places Monsanto and other GMO-type entities outside of the purview of the federal courts, much like, and this is important for people to understand, when you've got a tax claim, for example, you don't go into federal court. You go into an administrative court. That's not a federal court. That's not a courtroom in a federal courthouse. That's an administrative court. So it's much different. The reason I said that is because it's an autonomous body that operates outside of law. And this is why it's so important. So it takes it from that yawn factor. Why are we talking about this? And it really doesn't really have anything to do with us. Well, of course it does, because this is one way that I believe that they're going to starve the population. And think about, and Joe, what these genetically modified foods, I mean, what are we talking here about these foods? What are they? I mean, are they just...
They are lab-created crops. They have taken... We'll look like a human here. We'll use the human DNA versus transhumanism, where they are trying to take human beings and make them able to hook up to computers. Or I saw an interesting story was passed on to me earlier today, which I found fascinating and scary at the same time, about killer dolphins. I don't know if you heard about these.
Yeah, folks, listen to this.
And I'm trying to find the story here, but killer dolphins with machine guns.
Yeah, Really?
Yeah, let me pull up the story here. I know I sent it to you, but
no, you did. I'm not. I can't send it back to you, but
here it is.
Okay, all right.
In Ukraine, why Ukrainian killer dolphins probably are not on the rampage. Armed, lethal dolphins have escaped into the wild. Sometimes thinly sourced stories are too good to be true. Now, this goes on to say that there's lots of stories that have come out about these dolphins, some with the titles very that were
they're sketchy.
yeah, heavily armed sex-crazed dolphins on a rampage was one title. To another one, 3 commando dolphins go AWOL in Crimea. But either way, there are 3 dolphins, part of the Ukraine Navy's killer dolphin program, that have escaped their handlers during a training exercise, probably going to look for a mate. Sources from the Ukraine media said military dolphins were used, as the Ukraine's defense ministries denied the reports. But either way, there are dolphins trained to attack enemy combat swimmers using special knives or pistols fixed to their heads. Now, if you guys think that's crazy, America, the U.S. Navy, actually had its own fleet, but of dolphin programs, and we've all seen the video, or at least the pictures of the fish drones a while back. But yeah, we have dolphins that have a microchip in their brain that can be used to shoot, and they're in the water. Now, why do you need dolphins with weapons fixed on them with the ability to shoot things in the water? Sounds a little bit sketchy, but it is just absolutely insane. The level of technology. We're modifying crops, so in the words of the elite, we can feed more people, when really those crops are being not used to feed more people, but they're being used for to take over the whole agriculture system in the U.S. and part of the Codex Alimentarius, Henry Kissinger's Memorandum 200. The ability to starve a nation through and control a nation through food. They want and can. And look at the droughts we've had last year with the crops, the problems with the crops. Well, some of these GMO foods are drought resistant, which means they'll just grow regardless. But there has been numerous studies, some by high-level universities in and out of this country, that link these GMO, genetically modified crops, to cancer, to other brain disorders, and other disorders that have problems with unborn babies.
Well, the thing that gets me is we complain, and we bring to the forefront the craziness of Nanny Bloomberg coming out and saying, hey, you know what, you can only have a 32-ounce maximum soda, for example, and him coming across like that. Yet he's one of the biggest advocates, as well as others like him, into the GMO process. Or and the other thing too, I've got to say, well, and no one, by the way, seems to understand, or the general public, I should say, seems to understand less about GMO products than. That's one thing that's unclear to a lot of people, the genetically modified foods. In fact, you go to the grocery store, and I don't know, have you seen the irradiated beef and such at the grocery stores? Well, it's there, and there's a lot of people. When you ask, like, well, what's, just casually ask, well, what's the difference between irradiated beef and normal beef? And if you ask the average person, they don't know. When you start getting into, for example, GMO foods, they don't know. Well, this is part of the larger. The genetically modified foods is part of the larger. It has connections to, of course, the spraying of chemicals in the air, for example. So GMO products and chemtrails are there's a relationship between those. Now, I mean, not a direct relationship, but it's of the same objective and agenda, and of the same kind of group of people. And the same with vaccinations. All of this is related. So it's like, if you were to walk into an evidence room, and this is the only way I can
kind of process this mentally. Walk into an evidence room. One shelf would have, let's say, a box would be GMO foods. Another box would be aerial spraying of chemicals, otherwise known as chemtrails, which people say, oh, that doesn't exist, or that's just overblown. And then another part would be vaccines. And then, of course, you've got the Codex Alimentarius and Agenda 21 and so on and so forth, and the fluoride and but that room in the evidence room. What's that shelf labeled? Well, that shelf would be labeled global governance and the process of control by the global governance. So that's kind of how I process this in my mind. These are all little components to the larger agenda. So so it's not a yawner, folks.
No. Part of that agenda we've seen in recent months and especially weeks here is the gun control agenda. We had Dianne Feinstein and Ted Cruz trading verbal blows over a gun ban legislation in a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, and I have an audio of that. It's about 3 minutes. Ted Cruz and Feinstein, explosive debate over gun control in the Senate. And Feinstein says, I am not a sixth grader.
Do you have it queued up?
Yeah, I do. We're going to go to this audio, then we'll hit the article on the other side.
If I might pose a question to the senior senator from California. In your response to Senator Cornyn, you mentioned that there's some 100 pages of the bill that specify particular firearms that if this bill were passed, Congress would have deemed prohibited. It seems to me that all of us should begin as our foundational document with the Constitution. And the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights provides that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The term, the right of the people, when the framers included it in the Bill of Rights, they used it as a term of art. That same phrase, the right of the people, is found in the First Amendment, the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition their government for redress of grievances. It's also found in the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And the question that I would pose to the senior senator from California is, would she deem it consistent with the Bill of Rights for Congress to engage in the same endeavor that we are contemplating doing with the Second Amendment in the context of the First or Fourth Amendment? Namely, would she consider it constitutional for Congress to specify that the First Amendment shall apply only to the following books and shall not apply to the books that Congress has deemed outside the protection of the Bill of Rights? Likewise, would she think that the Fourth Amendment's protection against searches and seizures could properly apply only to the following specified individuals and not to the individuals that Congress has deemed outside the protection of the Bill of Rights?
Senator, yield for a question.
Let me just make a couple of points in response. One, I'm not a sixth grader. Senator, I've been on this committee for 20 years. I was a mayor for 9 years. I walked in, I saw people shot. I've looked at bodies that have been shot with these weapons. I've seen the bullets that implode. In Sandy Hook, youngsters were dismembered. Look, there are other weapons. I've been I'm not a lawyer, but after 20 years, I've been up close and personal to the Constitution. I have great respect for it. This doesn't mean that weapons of war, and the Heller decision clearly points out 3 exceptions, 2 of which are pertinent here. And so it's fine you want to lecture me on the Constitution. I appreciate it. Just know I've been here for a long time. I've passed on a number of bills. I've studied the Constitution myself. I am reasonably well educated, and I thank you for the lecture. Incidentally, this does not prohibit, you use the word prohibit, it exempts 2,271 weapons. Isn't that enough for the people in the United States?
Mr. Chairman?
Do they need a bazooka? Do they need other high-powered weapons that military people use to kill in close combat? I don't think so. So I come from a different place than you do. I respect your views. I ask you to respect my views.
Yeah, she'll respect your views if you respect her views, if I heard her correctly. I don't think that's the case.
No, she's jamming her views down the throats of every American. By the way,
the Senate Judiciary Committee has approved the ban on assault weapons and high-capacity ammunition clips now.
I mean, this draconian measure, this is such a draconian measure. Folks, once again, when you talk with your family members, when you talk with your friends, your coworkers, if the discussion comes up, I've heard this so many times, well, you don't need an AR-15 to kill a deer. It goes back to the basics. When you talk to the people that have this mindset, it may be important to remind them that the answers lie in the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the writings of Thomas Jefferson about the Second Amendment. The beauty part of the Second Amendment, and I'm paraphrasing here from Thomas Jefferson, is when you need it, it's there. Okay, and he's referring directly to the Second Amendment as it applies to our fighting against governmental tyranny. Not for hunting, not for skeet shooting, not for sports, not for whatever.
It's not for target practice?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. So, apparently, and I grabbed a book, my son, one of my son's college books about facts and fallacies and arguments involved, and it was kind of a strange title, but what I'm witnessing is, and what Joe, we were talking about this, what we're witnessing, is reframing the argument away from the real issue of the Second Amendment, what that's all about, to a bastardized version of what the Second Amendment is supposed to be according to Dianne Feinstein and others. Isn't it interesting how they cannot argue or they cannot talk if, in fact, and I'll close with this, Joe, and then you can go on, but if the government, if the senators, if our representatives, if the people out there that represent us or purport to represent us, if they understood the Constitution, then we would not be having any of these discussions. They would not exist. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, if they understood this, we would not have any of these discussions, simply because it's a Second Amendment right. And as a matter of fact, the states that are making all of these laws, and folks, this is one thing too, about the states, we have to watch what they're doing.
Now, remember yesterday, that clip of Ed Schultz talking about conspiracy, anti-government, right-wing conspiracy nuts trying to play off fears that Obama wants to take your guns when that's not the case. He's a proponent of the Second Amendment. He sticks up for your rights and constitutional freedoms. It's not about what Obama wants.
But I came across...
It's not what Obama does, even. Well, it is about what Obama does, but it's about who's behind those decisions.
Well, you know something? It's interesting because, let me just grab this note card here. When you mentioned that, I found, I was doing some research on Obama, and I think perhaps we need to just kind of go back to looking at what he has said, what he has done, what positions he has taken. Go ahead.
I want to jump this in here before you start. Is the public opinion aspect? This is our culture, our society, our public opinion. That's how the people think,
right?
And this through state-sponsored TV, well, through TV in general, is with propaganda is being created, is being shifted and shaped and molded into what they want us to believe, not what we are taught and brought up, and our generations of our families, the way they were brought up. We are living in a completely different world than our families and our ancestors were 100 years ago.
Oh, you got that right.
So what was acceptable 100 years ago might have still been controversial to the Constitution and ideas of change and moving forward. Those things were seen as especially allowing homosexuals to be married in churches. That would have been completely stopped at the ground level at every town hall, city, county by the people because they knew it was wrong. Where now the propaganda has shaped the public's opinions on what is acceptable and tolerant, not from a biblical point of view, but from their own created society they had 50 years ago or 100 years ago. They can do and create and shift the paradigm of our realities much faster with the mechanisms of technology today through the flow of information we have with the internet, the speed which that information flows, the control of the content of news stories. And Sandy Hook will use for an example because that's used in about every single report that is written about gun control anymore. Those issues, this couldn't have been done 100 years ago. This couldn't have been done even 50 years ago.
That's correct. And so too, and that point is so important because of the mind. Well, as you have said, the generations have been diluted, distilled. The thought processes, it's almost like a genetics issue where it just
makes
keeps
no
going
difference for class or race or status. We are all being programmed. The elite are programmed to think the way they do from their parents. Now, 100 years ago, a regular family in America, their parents would have brought children up to be hardworking, God-fearing, good people. Where today, kids are born into families, unfortunately, where the parents do not have any scriptural foundation or any biblical foundation or any knowledge of the Lord or His saving grace, nor do they care to have.
Exactly.
So they're being brought up, they're way behind the eight ball, And think of when you see people from any walk of life coming to the Lord, it's really a miracle in today's society that they would choose to be and walk with the Lord rather than all of the earthly pleasures and things that have been created for humans to be distracted by appear and much more interesting than following the Lord.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point you bring up because environmentally, and some say, well, geez, we're a product of our environment. Well, to an extent, I believe that's true. If you look at crime statistics and you look at any person that's involved in any criminal activities in terms of assessing them and evaluating them, and you look at the environment, and there are exceptions, of course, to this, but yes, today's homes, their families, it's not conducive necessarily to Christian viewpoints or the Christian worldview. It's anything but conducive to that.
Yeah, and even children who do, find their way to the Lord, whether it be through the Lord's intervention on them, and they have parents who are unbelieving, they're met with resistance from their parents at times. Family members today know what I'm talking about. Parents and brothers and sisters who have come to find the Lord when talking to their families about their experiences are met with resistance and being marginalized and having that element of division instantly brought between them just because of that belief.
One thing I'd like to do kind of as a homework assignment, this is a little off to the left or right or something. I mean, it's kind of a side road here. But to the listeners of this broadcast, if you are a parent today, we tend to think, and I fell into this myself, and you're going to know what I mean when you hear me say this. We tend to think, when we were in school, we had our school books, and we learned, we did our homework assignments and what have you, we turned it in. Well, we have a tendency to kind of equate our experiences with our children's, our school books with our children's. There's this assumption that nothing has changed. The homework assignment I would ask everyone to do, if you're a parent, of a child, either elementary or high school, take a look at their school books that they're bringing home, assuming that they do for homework, unless you're homeschooling, of course. But take a look at the school books and take a look at what's inside. For example, the history book, or what they call social studies, or whatever they might call it today. Take a look at the content, and just for example, read about American history, or just take a section and read the section to see if it comports with what you believe or have been taught. It might take you an hour or two to do this, but I would urge everybody that has a child in school today to do that, to grab a hold of their school book, and just, hey, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't even have to tell your child you're doing this, or whatever. And also look at the publisher, who published it, and the name and when. But I would think you might be surprised, for example, to read an account of the American Revolution, or the Industrial Revolution even, or particularly the Industrial Revolution, or how they portray some of the presidents and what have you. Take a look. Take a good hard look. Now, you don't have to grab their algebra book, okay, but specifically the social studies book. If you're a grandparent, maybe you can do that through your son or daughter and your grandkids. Just take a look at it and see if there's anything you find objectionable. And in so doing as well, maybe ask your school district for a curriculum. They've got curriculums out there for different grades, different, whether it be junior high, senior high, high school, whatever. And just be proactive. Ask them for a book list, a textbook list, what they're using. And I think you might be surprised, but do it. Get involved. That's my suggestion. Now, before we go any further, two things. We're talking about Obama, his Second Amendment thing. I don't want to stray too far from this. Just want to kind of give you a Cliff Notes version of Obama and the Second Amendment very briefly. When when Obama was in law school, he was mentored by Lawrence Tribe. Now, you might remember Lawrence Tribe. He was a big opposer to gun rights. In 1994, Obama joined the board of the Joyce Foundation. Very anti-gun. Also, he was a member of the Independent Voters of Illinois, the Independent Precinct Organization. Valerie Jarrett, supporter of the gun ban. Valerie Jarrett was a supporter of the gun ban as well. His closest advisor. He was. Valerie Jarrett, by the way, was deputy chief to Mayor Richard Daley of Chicago. Obama fought for a 500% increase on the taxes for ammunition back in 1999. Can you see where this is going? When he was a state senator, 500% increase on the taxes for ammunition. In 2003, he voted to ban the private ownership of hunting rifles, shotguns, target rifles, and black powder rifles in Illinois. That was in 2003. He voted twice against the Castle Doctrine, and that Castle Doctrine was presented as Illinois Senate Bill 2105. In fact, if you look this up, there was a case called Hale DeMar, who was arrested, involving Hale DeMar. He was arrested. He shot and wounded a felon by the name of Mario Billings, who was attacking him. It's a bizarre case. So anyone who says, for example, you hear Chris Matthews saying, "Oh, Obama, he's always, he never messed with gun owners." I just gave you, 5 or 6 examples during his career where Obama was staunchly anti-gun ownership, anti-Second Amendment, anti-self-defense, and pro-gun ban. So remember those folks from law school through today. Gun ban, ammunition taxes, anti-self-defense and castle doctrine, and of course, members of boards that have the same objectives. And before we move on, Joe, if you can just permit me one thing. I received an email during our opening talk about the Pope. Julie, thank you very much from Tucson. That's all I'm going to give. Julie from Tucson, I want to thank you very much for this email. Excuse me. She writes just briefly, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that she's been listening to us for a while. And she's a practicing Catholic Christian, and she appreciates the way that we're careful not to bash Catholics. But we don't, okay? Other Christians seem to bash Catholics, their beliefs and such, and that's just not a good thing to get into. Now, she does write about Tom Horn, where during the February broadcast, I believe it was, he did state that he is convinced and is professing that this particular Pope that was voted in now is the false prophet. Okay. Well, and she writes that she's very familiar with St. Malachi's prophecy before Tom Horn. And she writes also that she believes that he's making a grave assumption that this Pope is the false prophet of Revelation. The prophecy doesn't say that, she writes. The prophecy states that Peter the Roman will nourish his flock, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, the judge, or the just judge, will come to judge. The point is that we don't know if he's a good point or a bad Pope, which goes back to what you said. The works,
his works will be made manifest and over time, and we will judge him by his works and his fruits, not by any preconceived notions of prophecies or we are in a point where we need to know the times of the seasons we are in. And I was just reading, I think this is out of Jude. No, it was not out of Jude, but no, we are in a time where the seasons must be discerned. Timothy, I think it was here. But we not need be concerned with the date exactly. We should always be ready for the Lord to come.
Right.
So we will not be, and I'm not reading from any exact scripture here, but we should not be caught by surprise on the day of his return.
Right, because we know the season, we just don't know the day.
And we should not be caught by surprise, because we should be constantly living his word. We should be a living example of his word. We should be in his word, and our relationship with him should be so that we know and keep our heads up, for our redemption. Our redemption is near.
Joe, I just real quick, I heard it explained kind of, and I when I heard this explained this way, I can't remember who said this, but I thought it was pretty cool, because in my mind, in my very simple mind, I like to kind of simplify things. I heard it explained this way. Everyone's looking for whatever event, and you can apply this to any event, but in particular the second coming, for example. If somebody said to you, you know what, Joe, or you know what, listener, or whoever, your house is going to be burglarized on Friday, sometime on Friday.
Right. It says this in the Bible. If you know the time where the thief was going to break in, you would be sitting waiting for him. That's directly from the Bible.
Okay, so you've got a general idea, or even sometime over the weekend, you got a general idea. You don't need to know. I mean, once you have that general idea, you are going to be ready for the weekend. So that's all we really need to know about that, I guess. So the date setters out there, man, I just can't get involved in that, or I just can't really wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it says.
But Julie, thank you for your email, by the way.
Yeah, whether in patience or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therein do rejoice and will rejoice. For I know that this shall turn to my salvation through prayer and through the supply of the Spirit of the Lord Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and my hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness, as always, So now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live in the flesh, this is not the fruit of my labor. Yet what shall I choose? I would not. Um, no man can serve two masters. Either we are going to live in the flesh, or we are going to live in His Word, in our spirit. And yesterday we talked about the war between our flesh and our spirit.
Right.
But regardless of that war, we are always to be patient. We are always to exhort our, uplift our brethren, supporting the weak, and being patient towards all men. See that none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good. And I'm hearing something here. Don't know what it is.
I think it's. I think Christians United dropped off briefly. Now, the other thing too I want to mention is some people might not have heard what I said yesterday concerning the money issue. I got a couple of emails today asking me to repeat what my source had told me about the monetary issues. And I want to see if, basically, I want to just kind of go over this again with the economic collapse. And this is important, I believe, to get back into, just to reconfirm the information I got yesterday. When you start hearing about, and this was confirmed also via, this is also confirmed via Steve Quayle's source. When you start hearing about Japan, about the precipitous decline of the yen, know that things here domestically are close to happening with respect to our dollar. The other issue is, folks, you understand that people, or the objective of the global governance, the one world order people, the power elite, you understand that they want a single currency. That's the objective. They want a currency, a single currency. They want a digital currency, because they can manipulate, they can track, they can follow us, they can tax us, they can, through a centralized authority, much like the IRS is centralized. They want all transactions to be monitored and centralized. So in other words, imagine it this way. Imagine you don't have paper money anymore. You don't have coin anymore. You don't have anything. The only thing you have is an ATM-style card. The only thing you have is digital currency. You don't have the change in your pocket or the bills in your wallet. This is what the global one world order people want, the banker, the central banks want. Now, what's a great way to do it? Well, how do you get people, especially the people who are awake and know what's going on, how do you get them to soften up a little bit with respect to converting and accepting this digital currency, as opposed to having it in your pocket or in your safe? One of the ways, and just keep your ear out for this, when you start hearing about possible contamination of paper money, whether it be biological contamination or whatever, chemical, biochemical, biological, biochemical, whatever it is, when you start to hear that, when you begin to hear that there's a concern or an issue, and not just American currency, it could be all paper currency, any paper currency, no matter where it is, Europe, the UK, China, South America, North America. When you start hearing the concern or the possibility of contaminated currency, you know the objective is to get this money off of the streets and the change to a digital currency. I just want everyone to really understand there's two issues here. Keep your eye on the Japanese yen, and the second part of that is the contamination of our currency. When you hear that, know that the engine has started, the car is in gear toward this digital currency, and the eradication of paper currency or currency you would hold in your wallet. And once again, the reason is not for efficiency. The reason is for control and surveillance over you, your transactions, what you buy, what you sell, whatever it might be, what you pay, how much money you have in the bank or in whatever venue you have it in. This is what it's all about. So, folks who wanted me to repeat that because of our audio situation yesterday, I just wanted to repeat that, and hopefully that answers your question on that. So that's done.
All right. All of a sudden, when you were stopping your talk there, I heard a lot of scrambling. Say something.
Well,
yeah, there it is.
Scrambling?
Yeah. I don't understand. Nothing's changed, and nothing has changed.
Are we getting people talking about this? Let's scramble. Can we get folks in the interactive chat? Can you hear us fine, or am I scrambling? Am I digitized?
Just hang up on Skype and call back in.
I can do that.
And I'll continue as we're coming up against the break here. Anyway, I found the verse in which I was looking for out of Thessalonians. But of the times and of the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, you are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you as a thief. You are the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of the darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation.
That's very good. By the way, how's this?
It's much better.
Yeah, I can hear you much better, too. I don't know what that was. It's interesting. I like that. Where is that from, Joe?
That's from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5.
All right. Very good.
I have many other verses I picked out today that go along with that. Out of Jude, we read about the times of the end. It goes on to say, remember even the angels that did not keep their first estate, but left their own habitation, that have reserved an everlasting chains and darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication, going after strange flesh, are set forth as an example of suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Well, what are we seeing today in our nation? We are seeing the most profane, through the most profane way of culture and living, through abortions, through the establishing of going after strange flesh, the allowing of homosexuality, the sodomy, the bestiality that has been
it's being taught at Yale now?
Taught, yeah. It's being reinforced. It's ridiculous. I read a article off a judge today where Brown University was going to start teaching men how to gain pleasure through their own prostate. I think, if I read that correctly. I mean, just stuff that is absolutely sickening. And folks, we're up against the break. When we come back, we're going to hit on some more news stories.
We've got some really important things to hit, too. Should we let's just really quickly tell them what we're going to get into.
Just one story. I'll read the headline here, and then we'll go to break. Obama's defense to a Democratic senator complaining about how little his administration has told Congress about the legal justification of his drone policy said,
This is extremely important because it has a lot of backstory to it. With that, folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 14th day of March.
You didn't let me finish. You didn't let me finish to say what he said.
Well, what did he say? Well, I thought you were going to do that.
I'm no Dick Cheney. Folks, you're listening to Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Thursday, March 14th. We'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Pack.